I'll let you know when we're live.
Thank you.
Yeah, we started broadcasting now.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the decision days of myself, the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services, and the Executive Lead Member for Education, Councillor Forster. These decision days are being broadcasted in one session live on YouTube via the County Council website. So if I move straight to agenda item 1 for me today, which is the approval to spend for 26-27 holiday activities and food programme. Thank you. And I think it's Phil presenting this one.
That's right. Yep. Thanks, Councillor Chad. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to seek approval to spend up to £3.62 million of DFE funding to deliver Hampshire's holiday activities and food programme, better known as HAF, for the 26-27 financial year. So HAF continues to be a vital support for children eligible for benefits-related free school meals during the Easter, summer and Christmas holidays, providing not only nutritious meals and enriching activities, but also wider engagement opportunities for families. And obviously all of this supports well-being, reduces isolation and helps to alleviate the holiday pressures that many households unfortunately experience. Hampshire now runs one of the largest HAF programmes in the country, and that reflects both the scale of need and indeed the strength of our delivery model. Each holiday period, we commission around 160 schemes with a reach of nearly 8,000 children, and of course their wider families through them. We work with nearly 80 contracted providers through a very well-established procurement framework. And I'd also like to point out the report does confirm the continued support for the Short Breaks programme, which ensures accessibility for children with disabilities or additional needs. Also for the library service, who deliver a range of HAF-aligned activities in FSM hotspot areas, which really helps enhance the overall offer. So the proposed spend enables us to continue commissioning the provision through the existing framework, which doesn't expire until June 2027, and ensures that our holiday schemes can be planned and delivered in a timely and cost-effective way. The funding level has been agreed by the DFE and will be confirmed very shortly as part of the final local government finance settlement. And in summary, approval today will allow the Council to maintain a high quality programme supporting thousands of children, which aligns strongly with our strategic priorities and of course continues to deliver positive outcomes for many, many families across Hampshire. Thank you, Councillor Chad.
Thank you, Phil. I think everyone's got to be in agreement with this. This is such a great programme that we have, and we're always grateful for the funding for it. And actually Hampshire deliver it really, really well with our partners. And I think I thoroughly enjoy my visits to any HAF project. And I know that Councillor Forster does too. And our families enjoy it and our children. And that's the most important thing. I think it's really fantastic. A really great report as well. So thank you for that. I don't actually have any questions or any other comments on this. I don't know if anyone else does in regard to this one. Can't see any hands up at all. Perfect. So I'll make it really quick then. Really happy to approve the recommendation for the spend of up to 3.6, just over 3.6 million for holiday activity and food programme for a total period of 1 year from April 26 to March 27. Like I said, these are great, and I look forward to visiting lots more in the near future as well. So thank you so much, Phil, for that today. Agenda item 2 is the strategic commissioning approval to spend 2026 independent fostering agencies and care support. And Jason is presenting this one, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. Let me just okay. This report seeks permission to spend in relation to the provision of independent fostering agencies, IFA, and care support for vulnerable children and young people. There are 2 recommendations. Firstly, that the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services gives the approval to spend for up to £203 million over a maximum 8-year period for the provision of IFA services in Hampshire, with a contract start date of 1st of April 2026. And secondly, that the executive member gives a spend approval for up to £45 million, again for an 8-year period for care support, which is effectively home care, with a contract start date of the 1st of September 2026. In terms of the executive summary, I'd pick out three main points. Firstly, that this is not new spend. This is spend forecast within the existing budgets. Secondly, that the services in scope support the County Council to fulfil its statutory obligations to children and young people and would support continuity of service provision. And then thirdly, that the approaches to frameworks and multi-year contracts outlined are the preferred option, which enable the council to secure a compliant route to the market for the services that we need to purchase. In regards to the contextual information, the executive lead member will be well versed in the County Council's statutory duties in relation to children and young people. Specifically in regards to fostering, our duties are outlined in the Children Act 1989 and then supported by a range of subsequent legislation, specific regulations and statutory guidance. The same can also be said for care support, with particular reference to Section 17 of the Children Act, which defines a child in need and places obligations on the local authority to support those children and promote their welfare of them and their families. We also have a broader duty of sufficiency that requires the County Council to ensure that through either direct provision or commission services that we have access to a range of placements sufficient to meet the needs of all children in care. And then we also have a responsibility as the corporate parents to ensure that any placements that we make are of good quality and safe for children and promote their independence. In this sense, both foster care and care supports are part of a menu of service options for children and young people with varying levels of need and an essential and intrinsic part of our service offer. Looking at IFA more closely, the Council's existing arrangements for foster care include a mix of in-house provision and external provision through the independent fostering agencies. The external provision is currently commissioned through a Hampshire framework of 15 providers, which is due to end on the 31st of March 2026, and it's therefore planned to commission a new framework to start from the 1st of April 2026, which would run to the end of March 2034. The new framework would enable access to quality independent fostering agencies from suppliers who have tendered for the service, who meet the minimum service requirements, had the appropriate due diligence checks undertaken, agree to our relevant terms and conditions, and have been quality assessed by the Ofsted framework. It's proposed that the new framework would be open to new applicants for the lifetime of the framework. This would encourage provider participation and maximise the number of IFA beds available under this new contract. The future target is for up to 85% of all new IFA placements to be made via the new framework. The new framework would also seek to increase the proportion of Hampshire IFA framework placements being accessed by Hampshire children and young people, with the aim of keeping children in Hampshire where that's appropriate and in their best interests. There's also an ongoing focus on increasing the number of placements generally made under contracted suppliers and reducing the number of placements made through spot purchasing arrangements because of the quality assurance impacts of that. Focusing on care support, the current care support service operates under a framework agreement that commenced on the 1st of September 2022. This was established on a potential 4-year plus 2-year extension option basis. However, a strategic decision has been taken not to exercise the extension option, meaning the current contract will end on the 31st of August 2026. This decision reflects a planned shift in the commissioning and procurement approach for care support services and would allow us to redesign the service and to promote better outcomes and reflecting some of the changes in the composition of the market, allowing the County Council to gain best value in this sphere. In regards to finance, paragraphs 23 to 31 outline how the proposed contract values have been calculated, accounting for the impacts of inflation over the proposed contract term. I would just stress that the permissions sought are for an upper ceiling value for the proposed contracts. They are not a commitment to spend. Spend on an individual child's care package would and will remain subject to the Directorate's governance and sign-off processes at an individual child level. In relation to performance, the proposed contractual approaches would support the County Council to monitor key performance indicators and other metrics in place in the contracts, which give us a good oversight on provider performance. This complements the work of our social workers who review individual care packages at a child level. In general terms, having providers under contract helps us to maintain high quality services and build productive working relationships with the provider market. And this is applicable across all service areas. In relation to consultation, the proposed approaches would not be subject to formal consultation, but we would seek to incorporate the views of external and internal stakeholders, and particularly the voice of the child within this service design. And that would be within the service specifications and the key performance indicators as outlined in paragraphs 36 to 47. And this is an ongoing process, making sure that people are heard within the services they use. No negative impacts have been identified through completing the EIAs, and the services in themselves would actually have a positive impact for people with protected characteristics. Additionally, the 2 climate change assessment tools were assessed as not applicable to these services. Finally, in regards to local government reorganisation, we are obviously cited on this, and the proposed framework contract lengths would span the proposed LGR set-up dates and transfer periods. Our main priority over these periods would be to maintain service continuity, and there are a range of legal instruments we will apply to transfer contractual arrangements to new structures as appropriate as LGR rolls out. I would also note that our standard contract terms contain non-fault termination clauses, which means our successor organisations would not be locked into these arrangements in the longer term, should they wish to make changes in the future. In conclusion, the recommendations are that the executive lead member provides approval for both permissions to spend for £203 million for IFA and £45 million for the provision of care support as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Jason. That was a really in-depth overview, and I really appreciate that. That's really helpful. You've briefed us so brilliantly in the chairman's briefing as well on this, so I personally feel very informed about both these spend approvals that are needed today. Just to highlight, I think it's really important, as you've mentioned, about keeping children in Hampshire where possible. I think that's a really good part of what we do. And I'm also really pleased on your last bit where you mentioned about LGR. I think the unknown geography that brings at this moment in time is something we need to consider and work towards. But the fact that that actually that's been thought about in this process with those contracts, and actually any subsequent unitary authorities will be able to release themselves from those contracts going if they should wish, is really important. And you're absolutely right, it's that continuity of the provision that matters, and that our young people and our families and everyone that is part of that process has that service there from whenever those new unitaries are established. So has anyone else got any questions or comments on this one at all? Nope. Fabulous. So thank you again for the report today, and I'm happy to approve both of those recommendations for both of those spends. Thank you, Jason. And I believe you are the next one as well. So the next item on the agenda, agenda item 3, is the strategic commissioning of commissioning children's approval to spend 2026 supported accommodation. There is an exempt appendix for this one on there is an exempt agenda item linked to this one for agenda item 7. I have no I don't intend to go into a private session, so I'm happy. I think we can probably run both of those at the same time, but don't go into the exempt part of it. So over to you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Chad. This report presentation is very similar in structure. Initially, we did have all the things in one report, but it was felt to be a bit too much to try and go through it. So we did break it out into two parts to make it a little bit easier to digest. This report seeks permission to spend in relation to the provision of supported accommodation for vulnerable children and young people. There are 2 recommendations. The first recommendation is that the executive lead member gives approval to increase the value of the current high support needs framework by £9 million, This would allow the council to utilise a 1-year extension period to the current contract from the 1st of April 2026. The second recommendation is that the executive lead member gives approval to spend up to £174 million for the provision of high support needs supported accommodation under a new contract with an anticipated contract start date of the 1st of January 2027. The new contract would be called off from a proposed new overarching supported accommodation framework, which we're anticipating having in place from May 2026. In terms of the executive summary, the same 3 primary points: that this is not new spend, this is spend forecast within existing budgets. The services help us to fulfil our statutory obligations and will promote service continuity. And again, the approach to frameworks and multi-year contracts is our preferred route to sort of compliant procurement. Again, in regards to the contextual information in paragraph 9, the primary drivers behind this are again the Children Act 1989, which sets out a range of duties, subsequent legislation and statutory guidance. We also have some specific duties in regards to homelessness for younger people aged 16 and 17 years, and care leavers up to the age of 25. So there is specific legislation in that respect. And again, the broader sufficiency duty in terms of making sure that we have a sufficient number of beds for or services for all children in care applies, as does the elements around the corporate parent, making sure that the services that we're using, the placements that we're placing children in, are of good quality, and children are happy, healthy and safe from harm. We are essentially proposing to extend the current high support needs framework for 1 year to provide time to procure the new high support needs framework. The reason we are requesting the additional spend permission has been due essentially to higher than expected demand for this particular service, and that's particularly due to the increasing numbers of unaccompanied children who are being supported in these settings. So we're asking for this slight increase in spend approval in that area for that reason. The new overarching supported accommodation framework would be procured under the Procurement Act 2023 and would be for a period of 8 years from May 2026. And as stated, the first call-off from the new overarching framework would be the new high support needs call-off contract. This would allow for updated terms and conditions, a more flexible specification and a delivery model, and sort of more engagement with the external supplier market. And essentially, again, one of our primary objectives is to try to reduce the amount of spot purchase spend and increase the amount of provision under contract. In relation to the finance elements outlined in paragraphs 20 and 20 to 22, I would again highlight that neither of the permissions sought are new spend, and again the permissions are not a commitment to spend but an upper limit in relation to the contract values, and the scrutiny and the approvals for individual children and their care packages remains within the Directorate under established governance processes. In relation to performance, the obvious advantage of having providers under contract is that we are able to monitor their KPIs, build effective working relationships with those providers, which again complement the work of our social workers on the ground who are working with individual children. Similar to the last permissions, the proposed approaches would not be subject to formal consultation. That again, we'd be looking to incorporate the voice of the child and inputs from subject matter experts from internally, from within CNF, from external providers into the service design, including the service specification and the key performance indicators. Again, no negative impacts have been identified through completing the equality impact assessment, and by definition, these services would be of benefit to people with protected characteristics. And again, the 2 climate change assessment tools have also been assessed as not applicable to these services. And again, just for the record, the same applies in terms of local government reorganisation. We are conscious that the frameworks and the procurement approaches we are proposing span the LGR period. The relevant legal instruments and transfers can be applied, and also the no fault termination clauses will give that flexibility to our successor organisations should they wish to do something different in the future. So in conclusion, the recommendations are that the executive lead member gives approval for both the extension to the current high support needs framework for £9 million and the new high support needs contract under the new framework for £174 million.
Stuart, do you want to come in? You've got your hand up.
Yes.
Sorry.
In the report, there is a third recommendation, Jason. So there's the report to extend it by 9 million. And then the second one says, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's recommended that the executive lead member for Children's Services notes the intention to advertise for a new overarching supported accommodation framework with a value up to 242 million.
Yes, Stuart, yeah, sorry, so slight technicality within the report. So the permissions that the approvals that we're seeking are for the spend. So the 9 million extension to the current high support needs framework and the call off for the new contract under the new framework. But technically we don't need the permission to procure the new framework, but we need the permission to spend under that. So that was included, just to note that the overarching framework has a slightly higher value. When we come to do additional call-offs, we will come back for those explicit permissions around the different service types.
Right. So then specifically, where Ros, in your, sorry, Chairman, in your recommendations, you're agreeing, if you choose to do so, point 1 and point 3 of those bullet points.
Fine. Thank you for clarifying that. I did have a panic and thought I've got 3 on my list and the report as well, and still saw 3. So yeah, thank you again, Jason, for such a thorough presentation of the report, and such a good report as well. I'm not sure if any other people on the call have got any other questions or comments, but I think Steve and I in particular are well versed on what's going on with these. So yeah, so very happy to approve the recommendation for the £9 million which enables the year extension, and then the 174 million as well recommendation. So thank you, Jason, for those, and I think you're probably free to go as well. So rather than
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
So the next item on my agenda is the agenda item 4, which is the 26-27 revenue budget and savings report for Children's Services, and Dave is presenting this one.
Thank you. As we've gone through this at the briefing and we've gone through it at select committee, I plan to go through with a certain degree of brevity if everyone's content with that. So very quickly, the purpose of the report is just to update the position for the County Council post the local government finance settlement for 26-27 and to outline the Children's Services budget. There are 4 specific recommendations for you to approve, Councillor Chad, to approve the submission to the Leader in Cabinet for the revised 25-26 and proposed 26-27 budget for Children's Services, the Office of Proposed SB 26 savings, the changes to the local schools funding as set out in paragraphs 102 to 105, and the proposed fees and charges set out in Appendix 4. So I'll just take those in reverse. So just give a brief summary. The proposed fees and charges relate to the library service. And they are all related to either pre-existing SB 25 proposals, plans within those proposals, or they are just inflation related. So there's nothing odd or in any way irregular about those increases. And they're in Appendix 4. Changes to the schools funding, basically though that's a dedicated schools grant. It's very little we can actually do in respect of control on that. That spend comes through, or the grant comes through the DFE. But I think the key point to make on that is that the high needs grant has not increased in real terms in comparison to 25-26. So the pre-existing pressure that we've got from in 25-26 of 141 million, apologies, continues into 26-27. And of course, we know that growth is growing at a continuous rate. So we actually believe that for 26-27, the gap on the high needs budget is more like around £189 million, bringing the total cumulative DSG deficit up to around about £540 million by the end of 26-27. In respect of the revenue budget, the position after the local government finance or provisional local government finance settlement is that we are moved from a £143 million potential gap in 26-27 to 136, and that's primarily because we have got an improved position on the funding settlement of 6.7. So it still means a loss of £9.2 million funding that we otherwise would have received, but it is better than we had previously assumed. In respect of children's services budget, primarily the only changes since in effect the cash limit was set are those things that yourself and Councillor Forster will already be aware of and are represented in the current in-year position, namely the social worker establishment and the school transport savings or reduction in the level of demand that we were otherwise seeing, which are both positive, and those changes have been reflected in the 25-26 budget. The final thing to mention is that the SB26 proposals are set out in Appendix 3, and they reflect just two savings, one in respect of efficiencies and improvements within school transport, and the other for learning development area, a saving of £250,000. Both of those savings do not affect quality or volume of service available to the residents of Hampshire. They are simply efficiencies and improvements in the way of working. And in essence, that sums up that report. Quite a long report, but I'll try to do it as quickly as I can.
No, thank you for that, Dave. And I know Councillor Forster and I really do appreciate all the work that you do and how you keep both of us briefed on how the budget's looking. And we really do appreciate that. And I think a mention needs to go out to actually every member of staff and how they are working. During this, just continuing to deliver when we do see shockingly scary figures like the 545 million for the dedicated schools grant, which obviously does affect our cash flow actually as a local authority as well. So that's just means that we've got everyone is just doing an amazing piece of work across the board. I know Councillor Forster wants to have a word, and I'm hoping he's going to mention about F40 as well as part of his what he's going to say. So I'll hand over to Councillor Forster quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chad. Yes, I'll mention F40, which is the group of 40 of the lowest funded councils nationally, of which Hampshire sadly is one. And that's the reason that many of these services are statutory services. And for those that haven't been involved in previous discussions and maybe didn't watch the Children and Young People's meeting where this was discussed at length, this is a national issue, and the deficit is something that government have to address, and we hope that they will. There's a lot of lobbying going on, and the papers are due to come through Westminster fairly shortly. I would add my appreciation to all those involved for managing what is a very difficult situation incredibly well, and the cost control and the budget control that's in place. Some of the work that's been done is absolutely first class. There are no surprises here. It's just really reassuring and appreciated that we're able to manage it so well. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Does anyone else want to comment on the budget paper? Okay, doesn't look like it. So as it's been said, this has been through briefing. We've been briefed separately as well. This went to select committee earlier today as well, and I think there was a really good debate at the select committee and lots of questions asked and answered. Therefore, I am very happy to approve the 4 recommendations that are in front of me today in regards to the revenue budget and savings report from Children's Services. So thank you, Dave, for all your hard work on this, and very happy to approve. those recommendations. Then that brings us on to agenda item 5, which is the Children's Services Capital Programme for 26-27 and to 28-29. And that's Richard is going to present this one.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. And like Dave, as we've been through Select Committee this morning and you have been previously briefed, I'll keep this to the point. So the Children's Services Capital Programme, as you said, is a report that seeks any amendments to the 25-26 programme, the planned programme 26-27, the proposed programme for 27-28 and 28-29. There are 8 separate recommendations linked to this. The programme's worth £632 million over the 3-year period and remains balanced over that 3-year period and beyond. The priorities for the programme remain, and it's set in the report, new school places, SEND, special educational needs and disabilities, social care, and then a collection of other investment into early years inclusion, suitability and other activities. Just picking up quickly on those in terms of new school places, the report, over the report period, we will provide another 3,400 new school places to meet continued housing demand and growth across Hampshire. That's valued at circa £428 million. SEND investment will focus again on increasing resource provision as well as new schools, and there's £62.5 million in the programme to deal with that. Then we continue our significant investment into social care, which is in excess of £75 million. That includes provision for the new secure children's home to replace Swanwick and our continued work to support adoption and fostering activities across the county so children can stay in domestic settings and not move into the care system. Excuse me. In terms of pressures, we are mindful of the pressures that impact the programme, and that is in terms of surplus capacity as well as growth in the primary and secondary sectors. So we remain mindful of that. Construction inflation we will keep an eye on as well. That is at 16.5% over the period of the programme, and the continued housing growth across the county with 30,000 new homes planned over the next 5 years, and obviously that's driving a lot of our activity. The issue with that, it doesn't always materialise as quickly as one would expect, and therefore the programme needs to be able to flex with the change in circumstance around new housing and the provision and speed of new housing. That's all I was going to say about it, Councillor Chad, unless you want anything particular. But it's a very good news story with over £600 million worth of investment into the children's services estate.
Thank you, Richard. It is a real good news story. It actually, that £632 million over 3 years is amazing that we're able to have that type of capital to be able to deliver those school places. Absolutely, you agree with the focus being on obviously those new school places and the SEND in regards to our schools. In particular, the resource provision, we've got lots of those that have already been established and lots more on the horizon, hopefully, because they really do add value to our school community and value for the families and children that use them. It's really exciting to see in Appendix 4 some of the projects that are going on, and also the other projects across the children's services that will be taking place as well. Councillor Forster has got his hand up, so I'm going to invite Councillor Forster to either question or comment.
A comment, if I may. Thank you, Councillor Chad. First of all, just to say thank you to Richard Vaughan and the team for the amazing work. As was said in the Children and Young People's panel today, the reports are very dry, and it was lovely getting the presentation and the photos that actually illustrate exactly what we're doing and the fantastic work that the team is doing in delivery of some of these new schools. It's an in-house team, which is pretty unique in the country. We're able to deliver cost competitively and phenomenal quality. But really good to see this. Also, the work that's done to secure funding for this from developers, because as was identified, many of the new school places are where there's new housing. That's where there's need, and it's the developers that totally fund that. So appreciation to Richard and the team for the phenomenal work, and we look forward to continuing, particularly to continuing both the resource provision and the special places, and making sure that we're providing those places that are focused on the outcomes for our young people.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. I'm going to go straight to the recommendations unless anyone else has any questions or comments. It's already been noted that this has gone to select committee, and there was a great debate today and discussion, and it was concluded that this is really a good news story, and it got the full support of the members there. So I'm not going to read out all the recommendations, but there are 8 recommendations in front of me. I'm happy to approve all 8 of those recommendations. Thank you, Richard, and the team for all your hard work on these ones. The next item is short break activity grant recommendations 26-27. There is an updated appendix that's been published and is on ModGov for us if people haven't seen it yet. And I'm going to hand over, I think it's Sarah is doing this one. So hand over to Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. Yes, it's me. And just to clarify, so the updated appendix was due to a printing formatting issue. There's no change in content, so it was literally just to make sure that it was readable. So yeah, good afternoon, and it's always interesting for me to follow my other colleagues with their very big numbers, so I'll keep mine proportionately short and sweet. So my short breaks recommendation report has 2 funding recommendations in it, please, Councillor Chad. Firstly, that the grant recommendations in Appendix 1, totaling 615,633, are agreed, please, for short breaks providers, and this is to enable them to deliver youth, weekend and holiday activities to children and young people with a disability, and this is for the period 26-27, so will enable us to continue to be able to provide those services across the county. And secondly, please, that the grant recommendation of £20,000 to Hampshire Parent Carer Network be approved to enable them to continue their work with parents and carers of children with disabilities as well. So just 2 recommendations, please. The first one, 615,633 for grants to activity providers, and the second, £20,000 to our partner Hampshire Parent Carer Network. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Those numbers may be smaller than the previous numbers, but actually they are just as equally important, and actually what the service delivers in regards to short breaks is worth its weight in gold for those families and children that do it, and they really do appreciate it. And yeah, so it's always money well spent, I think, and it's great that we continue to do these. I don't have any questions about this. You fully briefed Councillor Forster and I see that he's shaking his head, but he's got no questions or comments about this one, apart from it is, it's another good news story actually, that we are able to help and support these families. And like I said, those figures may be less, but they are just as important, and absolutely what those young people get out of that service is just truly amazing, and the families as well. So I'm very happy to approve the recommendations in your report, and I look forward to actually hearing about some of these short breaks that some of the young, and what activities they've been up to as well. That'd be great if we can get some feedback on that. That'd be lovely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. We've already covered agenda item 7, so we don't need to do that one. So I am now going to hand over to the executive member for education for their decision day. So over to you, Councillor Forster.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chad, and welcome to my executive member education decision day. Rather oddly, the first item I've got, which is Heartland Village Primary School in Fleet. I am the local member for Fleet Town, and that's the proposed location for this new school. As such, I've sought advice from our legal services colleagues, who recommend that this decision be delegated to another exec member. In accordance with the process set out in our constitution, the leader of the council has therefore delegated this decision to Councillor Chadd. So I'm actually going to hand back over to her just for this item.
Thank you, Councillor Forster, and it really does actually give me great pleasure to make the decision on one of these items today. It's nice to approve a spend on something like this. So it's John, I believe, that is presenting the report. So I will hand over to John.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Councillor Forster. Thank you, Councillor Chadd. As outlined in the paper, we are seeking spend approval for 14.4 million to deliver the new primary school at Heartland Village in Fleet. The school is needed to meet the demand, excuse me, for places arising from the 1,500 new homes being built in that development. The school will provide two forms of entry, accommodating up to 420 pupils aged 4 to 11. The school is scheduled to open in September 2027 and will be operated by the Circle Trust Academy. The site and the majority of the funding comes from developer contributions secured through a Section 106 agreement, supplemented by basic need grant. The increase from the original budget is reflected in the capital programme recommended for approval by yourself, Councillor Chadd, earlier in the meeting. The additional funding is required to cover site contamination and construction inflation costs. The design prioritises sustainability and climate resilience through the use of air source heat pumps, a highly insulated building envelope, and natural ventilation heat recovery systems, and also incorporates solar PV panels, energy efficient lighting, and will use off-site timber frame construction to minimise embodied carbon. To adapt to future climate change, the school will also incorporate nighttime purge ventilation and brise-soleil shading. The requirement for 10% biodiversity net gain is being met on site through new landscaping works. Planning permission for the proposals were granted back in February 2025, and we are expecting to transfer the land in the spring, with work commencing on site in the late spring, and anticipating completion in summer 27 in advance of the academic year commencing in September. The project will deliver a modern, sustainable school at the heart of Heartland Village, supporting the growing community for years to come, and I commend this proposal for your approval.
Thank you, John. That's great. It all sounds absolutely amazing, and I really do look forward to seeing this school being built. I'm not too far away either and drive past that site quite regularly, so it'll be nice to watch it grow. Very happy to approve the recommendation for the spend, and I will now hand back to Councillor Forster for him to finish his decision day.
Councillor Chadd, thank you very much for approving that. It's greatly appreciated. It's an exciting project to be part of, and I'm really looking forward to it being built and opening September next year. We've got 7 more items to go through, so I'm going to step through them reasonably quickly. I know the first 3 are for John, I think, so we'll step on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the Hamble School, Hamble Rice.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. So on this one, as outlined in the paper, we are seeking spend approval for 1.11 million for the proposals at the Hamble School. The recommendation is conditional upon planning permission being secured for the car park works, and we're expecting to submit an application later this month, with a decision expected in March. The Hamble School currently educates 1,152 pupils aged 11 to 16, and the project is seeking to address the growing need for specialist provision for pupils with autistic spectrum conditions. Proposals will install a new adapted double modular building with a secure outdoor area to accommodate up to 15 pupils. The provision will open in phases from September 2026. The funding comes from high needs provision capital allocation, and the scheme was also included in the capital programme recommended for approval by Councillor Chadd earlier in the meeting. The works will be delivered through the Southern Modular Building Framework, with work starting in early summer and completing before the start of the new academic year in September. The project will enable pupils to remain close to their home communities, reduce reliance on independent placements, and support inclusive education within Hampshire. And I commend this proposal for your approval.
Thank you, John. That's greatly appreciated. Does anyone have any comments or questions on it? No. This is a great project. Thank you, John, and those who've been involved in this one. Quick delivery, as with many of our new projects, and I'm happy to approve the recommendation as in paragraph 2 to spend 1.11 million on the project for Hamble School. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 10, the Wavell School Farnborough resource provision. Again, this is a modular expansion. John.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. As outlined in the paper, we're seeking spend approval for £940,000 for the proposals at the Wavell School. This recommendation is also conditional upon planning permission for the car park works, and we're expecting to submit an application this month with a decision expected in March. Also, the Wavell School currently educates 1,050 pupils aged 11 to 16, and this project is going to address the growing need for specialist provision for pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs. We're proposing installing a new adapted double modular building with a secure outdoor area to accommodate up to 15 pupils also, and the provision will open in phases from September 2026. The funding comes from the High Needs Capital Provision Capital allocation and was also included in the capital programme recommended for approval earlier in the meeting. The works will be delivered through the Southern Modular Building Framework and will also start in early summer this year and complete in advance of the academic year. The project will enable pupils to remain close to their home communities, reduce reliance on independent placements and support inclusive education within Hampshire, and also commend this proposal for your approval.
Thank you very much, John. It's good to see more of these modular buildings. They're very different to the modular buildings that I remember from my youth. Very high quality, and as was discussed at CYP this morning, they have typically a 30-year plus life with appropriate maintenance, and therefore it's a good investment to see them, and those 15 places will be very much welcomed when they come through. Before I go to the approval stage, does anyone have any comments or questions? No? Okay, then I will take it as recommended in paragraph 2 that I will give approval to spend £940,000 on the project proposals for the Wavell School Farnborough, subject to the criteria detailed and upon planning permission being secured for the car park. So that is approved. Let's move on to item 11, the Witham College Fair Oak.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. As outlined in the paper, we're seeking spend approval for 1.2 million for the project proposals at Witham College in Fair Oak. The project addresses the changing needs of the school's pupil cohort and will deliver 2 key improvements. Firstly, we will refurbish surplus space in the existing art block to create additional SEND accommodation, including learning support areas, small group rooms and a regulation space. And secondly, we are looking to install a new external covered canopy with hard landscaping and drainage to provide a sheltered social and dining area for pupils. These proposals have been agreed with the head teacher and governors and do not involve any increase in pupil numbers. Funding comes from developers' contributions and will be delivered through the minor works framework for the internal refurbishment works and the landscape framework for the external works. The internal works will start in spring and complete during the summer holiday, while the canopy works will be carried out over the summer period. Both elements fall under permitted development rights, so no planning consent is required. The project incorporates measures to reduce carbon emissions, including the reuse of existing buildings, energy efficient lighting and heating controls, and will use timber from sustainable sources. And from a climate adaptation point of view, we are also including night purge ventilation to mitigate overheating within the refurbished building, and we'll be using low water consumption fittings and sanitary ware. The investment will enhance the school's ability to support pupils with additional needs and improve outdoor facilities for all students at the school. I commend this proposal for your approval.
Thank you, John. It does make me chuckle sometimes to hear minor works, spend 1.2 million, but it's fully understandable. It fits in with the various framework and other contracts that we have. It's reassuring to understand that we are working on a very sustainable basis on this work, as you just highlighted. And I think that shines through in much of the work that we're doing, which is appreciated by our residents. Does anyone have any queries or questions? Or I should have said questions or comments, but anyhow, fine. I'll go to the recommendation directly then, which is to give approval to spend 1.2 million on the project proposals for Wevin College, Fair Oak, as detailed. Thank you, John. I think that that lets you off the hook now.
Yes,
We
thank you,
move on to
Thank you.
item. We move on to item 12, which is the SACRE Annual Report 24-25. Justine, is this one for you or is it Natalie?
It is for me, yes indeed. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is for the Executive Member of Education to receive the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education, that's the SACRE, annual report, and the period is from August 2024 to July 2025. And the recommendation is for the Executive Member for Education to note the contents of the SACRE's annual report. And just as background for everybody, the SACRE's role is to advise the local authority to how to improve the provision of religious education and collective worship for schools in Hampshire. And that's the same role for any SACRE across England, as RE is not part of the national curriculum. And through the SACRE, local communities and teachers can influence and support its provision. It also carries out its role by requiring the local authority to review its agreed syllabus when it's thought necessary, and to sometimes consider applications to modify the requirements for collective worship. And that's all in the report. And every year, SACRE has a duty to provide a report on its activities, and it's the same report across each SACRE across England, with, of course, local information. Once that report has been received, it's provided to the National Association of SACREs, NASACRE, who summarise all the SACRE information, the Department for Education and Ofsted, alongside Children's Services Directorate and the authority's counsellors. And just a final note that the annual report that you see here was agreed by the SACRE when it met on the 3rd of November and is attached there for you. There is a lot of information in the report, and it summarises the work of the SACRE across the whole of that year, and the highlights are in the report for you to see. So I therefore present it for you today for noting. Thank you.
Justine, thank you so much. I always really enjoy the SACRE meetings that we have. It's a refreshing, different position to looking at building new schools, enhancing, etc. But it's so important in our multicultural, multi-religious environment that people are aware that our students learn good things about RE, and it's really impressive. So I'm appreciative of the work that you and the committee does. I urge those people who are interested, those members who maybe don't often come along to note the report themselves, and thank you for your work. Before I officially note the recommendation, are there any questions or comments? No. Justine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Report is noted. We can move on to the next item, which is item 13, additional specialist provision, resource provision at Hamble Primary School, which is the final approval. Natalie, I think this one is for you.
It is, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. This report ties nicely with the report that we had previously about Hamble Secondary School, because this is about Hamble Primary School, and it is part of the process in which we hope to create resource provision places so that children have a place at primary school with which they can follow through into secondary school. So the purpose of this report is to provide feedback from the statutory public notice consultation period and request final approval for the establishment of a resourced provision for 12 pupils with autistic spectrum condition at Hamble Primary School, opening in phases from September 2026. So the notices took place between the 7th of November and the 5th of December, and they were displayed at the school and circulated. There was also a stakeholder event. Only one email response was received in relating to the proposal, and we have addressed the comments received in that, which were very much from an individual perspective through our school improvement colleagues, and we are happy that they do not provide an impediment to progressing with the consultation. Nobody attended the drop-in, and for those of you that wish to see the only response, it is attached in the appendices. We remain confident that Hamble Primary is a good and inclusive school where a resource provision would operate at the highest standards and provide much needed specialist provision for our young people. We therefore hope that final approval is given for the establishment of this resourced provision.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Any comments or questions on this one? No? Well, it's self-evident. The fact that there was one comment which was responded to is not unusual. I think it's testament to the work that we do to make sure that what we're putting forward is absolutely right. I'm happy on that basis to approve the recommendation that approval for the proposal published by Hampshire County Council under Section 19 of the Education and Inspections Act for the establishment of a resource provision for 12 pupils with autism at Hamble Primary School, opening in phases from September 26. An aggressive and well needed time frame. So I'm really pleased to approve that as stated. I think we've got two more for you, Natalie. The next one is item 14, additional specialist provision, new resource provisions.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. As a background to this, you will all be aware that we are creating spaces for specialist places as efficiently and as focusedly as possible across Hampshire, because there is a great need, but the majority of the new need are children that we believe through the provision of additional resource provision can have their needs met within mainstream schools and within their communities. So this report is about the beginning of the journey of establishing 4 more resourced provision, and it's to request approval to undertake the statutory consultation and the publication of public notices for the establishment of a resourced provision for 12 pupils aged 7 to 11 with autistic spectrum condition at Crofton and Dale Junior School, opening in phases from September 2026. The establishment of a resourced provision for 9 pupils aged 4 to 11 with autistic spectrum condition at Fair Oak Infant School in Eastleigh, opening in phases from September 2026. The establishment of a resourced provision for 12 pupils aged 7 to 11 with autistic spectrum condition at Poulner Junior School in the New Forest, opening in phases from September 2026. And the establishment of a resource provision for 12 pupils aged 7 to 11 with social, emotional and mental health needs at Hiltonbury Junior School in Eastleigh, opening in phases from January 2027. So we hope, Councillor Forster, that approval is given to undertake statutory consultations and public notices for these 4 enterprises.
Natalie, thank you very much. It's very thorough. Any questions or comments? No. Looked at this and reviewed it. I know we've discussed it in great detail and a lot of people have provided input to it. I'm happy to approve the commencement of the statutory consultations for the 4 schools as mentioned, 12 places at Crofton and Dale School, Junior School, 9 at Fair Oak, 12 at Poulner Junior School, and 12 at Hiltingbury Junior School. And following that consultation period, if no objections are received, that I delegate to the Director of Children's Services final approval as specified in the report. Happy to approve all that as detailed in the report. Thank you. And that now moves us on to the last item on the agenda, which is item 15, additional specialist provision, expanding of the Waterloo School using utilising a satellite site.
Thank
Natalie.
you, Councillor Forster. Thank you. This is a very ambitious step for us, and we hope this approval is given to undertake a statutory consultation and the publication of a public notice for the expansion of the Waterloo School Havant by 70 places to open in phases from September 2027, utilising the former Peel Common Infant School site in Gosport. The use of satellites to expand special schools is proven to be very successful in Hampshire, with examples of this model including Henry Tyndale Special School, Farnborough, which has 2 satellite sites, and Osborne Special School in Winchester, and Riverside Community Special School in Havant, which each have 1 satellite site. They are all running very smoothly and providing an exceptional level of education for our children that are requiring specialist places in special schools. The Waterloo School is a community special school located in Waterlooville for pupils aged 5 to 11. It provides specialist support for pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs. And it is currently rated good in all sub-areas by Ofsted, and it was last inspected in March 2025. We are therefore very confident in the school with our extensive support to be able to deliver a high quality of education at this satellite provision. And we are very pleased that we are able to use the Peel Common site in order to host this. Approval is therefore sought to undertake these statutory consultations. Councillor Forster, back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I have visited personally Henry Tyndale and Osborne, and it's been really reassuring to talk to teachers, staff, as well as many of the children there and get their feedback on what phenomenal locations they are. And the approach of the satellite school is fantastic. Having the opportunity to do that with Peel Common, I think, will be very well received by residents of the area and by those who need those spaces. Having the opportunity to create 70 places is quite unique, and I'm therefore very keen to see this progress. Before I move to the recommendations, any questions or comments? Lots of shaking heads, that's encouraging. Fine, I'll go straight to the recommendations so we can finish the meeting nicely, well, just a few minutes late. So I'm happy to approve the commencement of a statutory consultation with a public notice for the expansion of the Waterloo School Havant by 70 places in phases from September 27, using the Peel Common Infant School. And paragraph 3 on the report, the next steps, if no objections are approved, to delegate authority to the Director of Children's Services to take the next step. That is all fully approved. And that brings us to an end of the meeting. I'd like to thank Justine, Natalie, John, Richard, everyone who's been involved today, and of course Councillor Chad for the decision on Heartland Village. Juliet, thank you for the work at Children and Young People earlier today, and the detailed questioning from yourself and the other members who came along to that. All really constructive and positive. On that basis, let's end the meeting today. Can we please end the webcast?